The first time it really landed, we were standing near the front window of a restaurant on a quiet Tuesday night. Nothing dramatic, just waiting for water. My girlfriend leaned back in her chair, glanced at the server walking past and said calmly, "You people are all the same." I didn't say anything. I didn't correct her. I didn't raise my voice. I just folded my napkin once, set it on the table, and watched the server keep moving like she hadn't heard it. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen pop up in weeks. I didn't check the message right away. I just let it sit there while the room filled back in with noise. That was the moment I knew something I'd been avoiding was about to catch up to me. My name's Daniel. I live in the Dallas area, and for most of my adult life, restaurants have been my world, not the glamorous side. The floors that stay sticky no matter how often you mop them. The late nights, the smell of dish soap that never really leaves your hands. My parents both worked in food service their entire careers. My mom waited tables off I-35 for years. My dad cooked on a grill line until his shoulders gave out. I grew up doing homework in booths after closing, listening to chairs scrape and registers count down. When I was 13, I found my mom sitting in her car after a shift, hands on the steering wheel, just staring. A customer had yelled at her over a steak. Management comped the meal. She held it together until she clocked out. Then it all came apart. She told me quietly, "People forget we're human." I carried that with me longer than I realized. I worked my way through every job I could get. Dishwasher, server, bartender. I saved. I paid attention. By my late 20s, I opened my first place, then another, then one more. Nothing flashy, just solid food, fair systems, and one hard rule. Nobody on my staff gets talked down to. About 4 months ago, I started dating Lauren. She's an interior designer, sharp, organized. When it's just the two of us, she's thoughtful and easy to be around. She remembers how I take my coffee. She asks about my day. On the surface, everything works. But there were moments, small at first. A dismissive wave at a retail clerk. A sharp tone with a barista during a rush. I told myself everyone has bad days. I told myself not to project my past onto her present. I didn't tell her what I do for a living in detail. I just said I was in hospitality. I wanted to see who she was without context filling in the blanks. The comments kept coming, always controlled, always justified. Standards, she called them. Each time I felt that same quiet tightening in my chest. Not anger, recognition. That night at the restaurant, after the comment, the server came back with water. Lauren was already scrolling on her phone. The moment passed for her. I took a sip, thanked the server by name, and felt my phone vibrate again in my pocket. When we left, the air outside was cool and still. I unlocked the car, waited for her to get in, then sat there with the engine off. I finally looked at the message. It was from my sister, asking if I had a minute to talk later. I put the phone face down on the console. Then, I drove us home. The next morning, I woke up before Lauren did. The apartment was quiet in that early way, when the only sound is the refrigerator cycling on and off and a car passing somewhere outside. I made coffee, stood barefoot on the kitchen tile, and stared out at the parking lot without really seeing it. My sister's message sat there in my head like a pebble in a shoe, small but impossible to ignore. My sister's name is Hannah. She's 23, a recent hospitality graduate, and she's been stubborn about learning things the hard way. She doesn't want shortcuts. She doesn't want anyone to assume she's getting special treatment because of me. That's been her line from the beginning. A couple years ago, when she told me she wanted to move into restaurant management, I told her the truth. If you want to lead people in this business, you have to understand what you're asking them to do, not in theory, in practice. So she did what I did. She started on the floor, host stand, running food, serving. She's good at it too. Not because she's flashy, because she's steady. She listens. She doesn't take things personally in the moment, even when she should be allowed to. Lauren didn't know any of that. She'd met my family once, briefly, at a casual gathering. I didn't introduce Hannah as my sister that night because Hannah wasn't there. And I didn't fill Lauren's head with details about my restaurants because I didn't want to become a conversation piece. I've dated people who treated my work like a perk, like a pass to special tables and free meals. I wasn't interested in that. So whenever Lauren made one of her comments, I tried to handle it the way I handle most things now: calm, private, after the fact. The first time it was at a boutique shop in Uptown. A young employee walked over with that careful friendliness you see in retail. Smile ready, voice trained to sound cheerful even when the store is empty and the day feels long. She asked if we needed anything. Lauren didn't look up from the rack. She just lifted a hand and waved her off like she was brushing away smoke. "If I need you, I'll call you over." The employee's smile faltered. She said something polite and stepped back, but I saw her ears go pink. I felt my stomach drop. That familiar tightness, like I just watched someone kick a dog and keep walking. In the car, I tried to bring it up gently. I said the girl seemed nice. Lauren genuinely didn't understand what I meant. She said she didn't like being hovered over. She laughed, like it was a simple preference, not a choice to embarrass someone. I told myself to let it go. The second time was at a coffee shop on a Monday morning. The line was long. The baristas were moving fast, and you could hear the blender and the steam wand and the constant calling of names. Lauren took one sip, frowned, and stood up so quickly her chair legs scraped hard against the floor. She walked straight to the counter and cut in front of the people waiting. I followed because I knew what was coming. She leaned in and said, loud enough that heads turned, "Can you even read?" I said, "Almond milk. This is regular." The barista looked exhausted. Not lazy, not careless, just tired. She apologized immediately and offered to remake it. Lauren kept going. She added that she was lactose intolerant. She wasn't. I knew that. I'd eaten with her enough to know it. When the barista offered a small pastry for the trouble, Lauren accepted it like it was a win. In the car, she talked about her client meeting while unwrapping the pastry. I tried again, quieter. I said mistakes happen and it didn't need to be like that. Lauren said she has standards. She said accountability matters. She said I was too nice, like kindness was a soft spot people could exploit. That's when I started paying closer attention. Not to catch her in something, just to understand whether this was situational or something deeper. Last week, we went out to a restaurant that was clearly understaffed. You could see it right away. Fewer servers moving faster than they should. Tables waiting longer than normal. The sound of the kitchen door swinging constantly. Our server, a woman in her 40s, looked like she'd already worked a full day before she got there. Lauren kept her eyes on her phone, held up a finger when the server asked for drink orders, and later snapped her fingers to get her attention when she was only a few steps away. It wasn't even anger on Lauren's face. It was casual, like this was normal behavior. When the check came, Lauren tipped low without hesitation. After she left for the restroom, I added cash to bring it up to a fair amount and handed it directly to the server. The server didn't make a big deal of it. She just gave me a tired smile that felt heavier than a thank you. That night, lying in bed next to Lauren, I stared at the ceiling and thought about my mom in her car. I thought about my dad's arms burned from the grill. I thought about Hannah working the floor to earn her place the right way. And I realized I had been hoping Lauren's behavior was a phase because it would be inconvenient for it to be a pattern. 2 days after that, I had a meeting scheduled at one of my restaurants, an upscale Italian place in the city. Nothing dramatic. Just a mid-afternoon sit-down with my partner about staffing and food costs. I told Lauren I was tied up with work. She said she might meet a friend for lunch. I didn't connect those two things until I was already seated in the back booth of my restaurant, looking over invoices, when I heard her voice rise above the normal dining room noise. I didn't look up right away. I just listened. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Restaurants have a way of blending voices together, turning conversations into background texture. But then I heard her laugh. Short, sharp, familiar. And I knew. I stayed where I was. The booth I'd chosen sat slightly back from the main floor, tucked near a divider. From there, I could see reflections in the glass and movement between tables without being obvious. Years in this business teach you how to observe without inserting yourself. Lauren was seated near the front with another woman I didn't recognize. Both of them had their menus open, phones face up on the table. Their server approached with water. I recognized her immediately. It was Hannah. She was in her work mode, shoulders squared, neutral expression, calm voice, the version of her she puts on when she's on the floor. She placed the glasses down and said something polite. I couldn't hear the exact words, but I saw Lauren's face tighten. "I didn't ask for lemon," Lauren said. Her voice cut clean through the room. "Do you not listen?" Hannah didn't flinch. She nodded once, picked up the glass, and said she'd bring a fresh one. The glass was spotless. I could see that even from where I sat. But she didn't argue. She never does. The bread came out next. Lauren touched it, barely, then pushed the basket away. "This is cold." Hannah took it back without comment. Her friend laughed, not loudly, just enough to be heard. The kind of laugh people use when they want to align themselves with the person doing the cutting. I felt something shift in me then. Not anger, not yet. More like a door quietly closing. Hannah returned to take their order. Lauren was on her phone. Hannah waited, patient. When Lauren finally spoke, Hannah asked her to repeat the dressing choice. That's when Lauren said it. I said balsamic. If you were paying attention instead of standing there stupidly, you'd have heard me. The word hung there. Heavy. Ugly. Hannah wrote it down. Her hand didn't shake. She repeated the order back, voice steady, and moved on. But I could see it in her shoulders, the tension, the effort it took not to react. I sat back and folded my hands on the table. This was the moment where my role changed. Up until then, I'd been an observer, a man gathering information, trying to understand a pattern. Now I was something else entirely. I didn't stand up right away. I waited. I watched the food go out. I watched Lauren cut into her dish, already looking for a flaw. I'd seen that look 1,000 times before. The setup. The expectation that something would be wrong because she needed it to be. "This is dry," Lauren said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Hannah apologized and offered to have it remade. Lauren waved her off. "It's fine. Just tell your chef to do better. If you even tell him the right thing." Her friend laughed again. Then Hannah asked if there was anything else they needed. Lauren leaned back in her chair and said casually, "You people are all the same. Can't even do simple jobs. That's why you're scraping by on tips instead of doing something real." That was it. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor, louder than I intended. A few heads turned. Hannah looked toward the sound, and for a split second, her professional mask cracked. Just a little. Recognition flickered across her face before she straightened again. I walked toward the table slowly. Not rushed, not dramatic. I stopped just short of them and asked evenly, "Is there a problem here?" Lauren's expression transformed instantly. The sharpness melted into a bright smile, like a switch had been flipped. "Daniel! Oh my God! What are you doing here?" I didn't answer that yet. I looked at Hannah instead. I placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "You okay?" She nodded once. Barely. Then I looked back at Lauren. "You said the service was terrible?" She gestured at Hannah with her fork. "She's been incompetent since we sat down." I nodded slowly. "Okay." I let a beat pass, long enough for the table next to us to go quiet. "This is my restaurant," I said. Lauren blinked. "What?" "I own this place," I continued, my voice flat. "And 2 others in the area." Her friend stopped smiling. "And the server you've been talking to," I said, keeping my hand where it was, steady and grounding, "is my sister." The room felt like it inhaled all at once. Lauren opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I just stayed there, standing between my sister and the table, letting the reality settle. Then I waited. I didn't say anything right away. Silence can do a lot of work if you let it. I watched Lauren try to reorganize her expression, like she was flipping through mental folders looking for the right response. Around us, the dining room had gone quiet in that subtle way people get when they know something real is happening but don't want to stare. This doesn't need to be a thing, Lauren finally said, lowering her voice. We were just giving feedback. I nodded once. Okay. I turned slightly, enough to face both her and the table without moving my hand from Hannah's shoulder. Let's slow this down, I said. I want to be clear about what's happening. That was the shift, not emotional, procedural. In this restaurant, I continued, we follow a few rules. Step 1. Servers are spoken to with basic respect. Step 2. If there's an issue with food, we fix it without assigning blame. Step 3. If a guest insults or degrades staff, that interaction ends. Lauren's friend started to speak. I held up a finger. Not at her. Just in the air. She stopped. You told my sister she's stupid, I said calmly. You said people like her aren't doing anything real with their lives. Those aren't service complaints. Those are value judgments. Lauren's face tightened. You're taking this personally. Yes, I said. Because it is personal, and because it's professional. I reached into my pocket and took out my phone. I didn't unlock it. I just held it. Everything in this room runs on systems, I said. Orders, staffing, inventory, scheduling. Respect is part of that system. When it breaks, the rest follows. She shook her head. You're embarrassing me. I glanced around the room. No, I said. I'm defining what's acceptable here. I looked at Hannah. You did exactly what you were supposed to do, I told her. You don't need to stand here anymore. She hesitated for half a second, then nodded and stepped away toward the service station. As she walked off, a few nearby tables looked at her differently, not with pity, with recognition. Lauren's voice rose. So what? You're choosing a server over your girlfriend? I let that question sit. Then I answered it carefully. I'm choosing how people are treated in my restaurant, I said, including my staff, including my family, including you if you let me. Her friend pushed her chair back slightly. Maybe we should just go. That's probably best, I said, meeting her eyes. I'll take care of the check. Lauren stood abruptly, grabbed her purse. This is unbelievable, after everything. We've been dating 4 months, I said. That's not everything. This, I gestured lightly toward the floor, the room, the people moving again as the tension loosened. This is. I walked them toward the door, not aggressively, just present. Lauren tried to say something else, but I wasn't engaging anymore. At the threshold, she turned back once, searching my face for something. An opening, a crack. There wasn't one. After the door closed behind them, the restaurant sound returned in layers. Glasses clinking, a laugh from the bar, orders being called. I stood there for a moment longer than necessary, letting my breathing settle. Then I went to the back office and closed the door. A few seconds later, there was a soft knock. Yeah, I said. Hannah stepped in. She didn't speak at first. She just stood there, hands clasped, eyes shiny but steady. I pulled out a chair and gestured for her to sit. She didn't. Instead, she took a breath and said, I wanted to handle it right. You did, I said. I knew you were here, she admitted. I saw your coat earlier. I wanted you to see I could manage it. I nodded. You don't have to prove that anymore. She exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding it in for a long time. I told her to take the rest of the week off. Paid. No argument. She tried anyway. I shut it down. After she left, I sat alone in the office, looking at the daily reports without really reading them. My phone buzzed. A message from Lauren, then another. I turned the phone face down on the desk, and I waited. I didn't respond to Lauren that night, or the next morning. The messages kept coming anyway, short at first, then longer. The same themes repeated, just rearranged. That I'd overreacted, that she'd had a bad day, that I'd blindsided her. I read them once without replying, then muted the thread. 2 days later, I was back at the restaurant during dinner service. Not hiding, just doing my normal walkthrough, checking tables, talking to the kitchen, watching the floor. Hannah wasn't scheduled. I'd insisted on that. The staff moved differently than usual. Not nervous, more focused. Word travels fast in this industry. About an hour into service, the host came over quietly. Daniel, there's someone asking for you. I didn't need to ask who. Lauren walked past the host stand before I could respond, straight toward me like she belonged there. Her posture was composed, her voice low. "Can we talk?" "I'm working," I said, calm, even. "Now's not the time." "I just want to apologize to your sister," she said, a little louder. A few heads turned. Behind the bar, Hannah was restocking glassware. She heard it. I saw her pause for half a second, then keep moving. "I don't accept," Hannah said without turning around. Lauren stiffened. "I wasn't talking to you." Hannah set the bottle down and turned. "You don't get to decide that. You said what you said. I heard it." Lauren looked at me, eyes sharp. "This is exactly what I mean. You're letting this get out of hand." I shook my head. "No, this is it being handled." Hannah spoke again, voice steady. "You didn't treat me badly because you were stressed. You treated me badly because you think people like me deserve it. I don't accept apologies that only exist because you found out who my brother is." The dining room was quiet again, not frozen, just attentive. Lauren's face flushed. "You're all making this into something it's not." I answered her, not loudly, not softly. "It's exactly what it is, and this isn't the place for it." She looked around, then back at me. "So that's it?" "That's it," I said. She scoffed, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. As she passed a nearby table, she said, loud enough for people to hear, "This is why I date up. At least successful men understand class." A couple of servers snorted before they could stop themselves. Hannah laughed, not bitter, just surprised. After Lauren left, service resumed, not awkwardly, smoothly, like something unhealthy had been removed from the room. Later that night, after close, Hannah and I sat at the bar with 2 glasses of water. No alcohol, just quiet. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded. "Yeah, actually, yeah." I told her she'd be moving into assistant manager training when she was ready. Not because of what happened, because she'd earned it. She smiled then, a real one. When I got home, my phone had several missed calls and one long voicemail. I didn't listen to it. I deleted it. Instead, I made tea, stood at the counter, let the day settle. Outside, the city hummed like it always does. Inside, things were finally quiet. The week after that was quieter than I expected. Not empty, just orderly. Hannah came back to work when she said she was ready. No hesitation, no visible edge. She started shadowing our evening manager, learning schedules, inventory counts, how to handle vendor calls without letting them rush you. Twice a week, she still picked up serving shifts by choice. She said it kept her honest. I understood that. The staff noticed the change too. Not because I announced anything, I didn't, but a few of them stopped me in passing, short comments. "Thanks for the other night." That meant a lot. One guy in the kitchen, been cooking longer than I've been alive, said quietly, "I've never seen an owner do that." Then he went back to his station like that was all he needed to say. Lauren didn't disappear the way people do when they accept an ending. She disappeared the way people do when they think silence is temporary. First it was texts, then voicemails, then emails, long ones, carefully written, subject lines like reflection and understanding. I read one all the way through. The message was simple beneath the wording. She wasn't wrong. We were just different. She framed it as upbringing, as class, as me being too sensitive to understand how standards work. She never once mentioned Hannah by name. I replied once. I told her this wasn't about class, that my parents worked service jobs their entire lives and built something solid out of it. That respect isn't something you earn by income or job title. It's something you give because someone is standing in front of you doing work that needs to be done. I told her I didn't want someone who was kind only when it benefited them. I ended it by asking her not to contact me again. She responded with one line. "You'll regret this." I didn't. A few nights later, I was having dinner at an old steakhouse across town with my business partner. Not one of mine. Just a place that's been around forever. Same booths, same lighting. We were talking expansion timelines when I heard a familiar voice a few tables over. Lauren, same tone, same impatience, different server. I didn't turn around right away. I didn't need to. I could hear the pattern. Complaints framed as lessons. Condescension disguised as feedback. My partner glanced at me. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. What surprised me wasn't her behavior. It was the response. The manager approached their table. Older guy, calm. He listened, nodded, then, in a voice that carried just enough, told her they don't allow staff to be treated that way. He asked them to pay their bill and leave. Lauren's chair scraped back. Her companion argued briefly. It didn't work. As they walked past our booth, Lauren saw me. Our eyes met. I lifted my glass slightly. Not mocking, not triumphant, just acknowledgement. After they left, I tipped their server extra. He smiled, shaky but grateful. "Thanks," he said. "That was a rough one." "It showed," I told him. "You handled it well." On the drive home, my partner shook his head. "Same everywhere," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "Patterns tend to repeat." When I got home, I made tea again. Same mug, same counter. I wiped it down out of habit even though it was already clean. Order has a way of restoring itself if you let it. Before bed, I checked my phone. No new messages from Lauren. That felt final. A couple weeks later, my dad called. We don't talk every day, but we check in. He asked how work was going. I told him, briefly, not every detail, just enough. He went quiet for a moment, then said, "Your mom would have been proud." He didn't add anything after that. He didn't need to. Hannah settled into her new role easily. She still wears the same shoes on serving shifts, still checks tables herself. She told me once, while we were closing up, that the whole experience clarified something for her. Not what kind of guests exist, but what kind of manager she wants to be. One who steps in early, one who sets lines clearly so others don't have to absorb the damage. As for me, life returned to its normal rhythm. Paperwork, walkthroughs, late dinners, quiet mornings. A few weeks ago, I met someone new, completely unintentionally. She came into the restaurant after a long shift of her own, thanked the server by name, asked how his night was going, left a solid tip without making a point of it. When she dropped her napkin, she picked it up herself instead of flagging someone down. That told me more than any conversation could have. On our third date, she asked about my family. I told her about my parents, about Hannah, about why I run my places the way I do. She listened, just listened, then said, "That makes sense." Nothing more, no judgment, no advice. That's been enough. Every now and then, someone new comes through one of my restaurants who reminds me of Lauren. Same tone, same entitlement. It doesn't rattle me anymore. Systems handle what they're built to handle. People reveal themselves if you give them space. And when they do, you don't have to raise your voice. You just decide where they're allowed to stand. If you've been listening this far, thank you for sharing the time with me. If this story resonated, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps this channel reach people who might need it. Let me know in the comments what city you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. 2 more popular stories will be coming up next, and I hope you'll stay with us for those too.